Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Nitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is November 10th, 2024. Welcome to Native Calgarian. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by this Satu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you could pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments and questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcast and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share the things you learn to your networks. And I'm going to say that with a little more conviction because today, the co-commissioner, the chair actually of the Reconciliation Action Group, like literally my Bible in life, passed away. And I was utterly and completely devastated and shocked to learn how many people didn't know who he was. So it's interesting how many people will wear an orange shirt on November 30th, but not understand the why. So when I say, if you listen to this podcast and you learn something, please share it to your network, because I guarantee whether it's, hey, I didn't know who Murray Sinclair was, the Honorable Murray Sinclair, or hey, did you know this? Did you know we have a book club? Please share that to your network, because clearly people are still very unaware of a lot of basics. Anyway, hi, my name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use they, them pronouns. Oki naganago meko che chestakom aki. Nera daga derago ekot nagotine siku saradi. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Delany. I am a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Pinchotine Indahe in my language, meaning many big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born here in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. And being how this is my first podcast we have recorded since the Trump re-election, I'm going to say that again. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. And for all of the folks with darker skin that think that white supremacy is going to save you, or white superiority, I think you're about to get a real wake-up call, my friends. My late great-grandfather, Milo Beewolf from Delany, his daughter, Alice, is now my late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous people's inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ plus community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft, all through policy. According to the Quality of Life report for 2024 through the Calgary Foundation, life is harder if you are part of a racialized group. 42% of a racialized group do not have timely access to culturally appropriate health or well-being services, and 40% of members from a racialized group cannot find suitable employment, up from 31% from last year. I'm not a social worker, nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I share my journey as a Dene mom navigating this colonial, misogynistic, racist world in 2024 as a trauma-informed Dene woman who has run, joined harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at expensive conventions, left my home to travel to those conventions to vote on incomplete policies that still allow for colonial incarceration, a denial of justice, a denial of health services, racism, colonial trauma, and genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples. I have work to continue, reports to advocate for, and attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for this small country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation, and as a treaty partner. Pride should never be 1 month. It's important to understand that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is worse on these lands by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in this so called time of reconciliation. Can it be performative? Of course. It's important land acknowledgements have meaning. Otherwise, you're just creating more harm, much like asking me who Marie Sinclair is. What the heck, dudes? I encourage everyone to introduce themselves with an acknowledgement of your ancestors, stories of displacement, how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement, so we as Indigenous people know how safe you are to be around. If you won't pronounce your local Indigenous nations' names, won't say your pronouns, won't say your story of origin, won't acknowledge stolen lands, won't acknowledge imposed economic oppression or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my community, my family, and myself, because we face the most colonial violence based on ignorance or worse, willful anti Indigenous biases. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties, and lies taught today in Canadian schools nationally. That's why settlers and those who call themselves native Calgarians or whatever town you're from, you show me you have no Indigenous 101 understanding. Jesse Winty's book, Unreconciled, explains it perfectly, as do many Indigenous authored books. Land back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would also be a part of a treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation, and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former geomatics drafter, I would be happy to teach you more, but you'll have to pay me. So go to nativecalgarian.com for more if you want me to come in and see you and chat with you. I want to introduce my friend who, one, I'm going to apologize to you and my listeners because we actually recorded a podcast by Rice. So now you're back, and I'm so grateful you wanted to come back. And would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I'm Braden Kadlum. I'm originally from Kogluk, Nunavut, but I grew up in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Now I reside in Mount Kinsis or Calgary. And I'm a current student at the University of Calgary, my third year of philosophy. I'm also a content creator and a new author.
Which is amazing. Do you want to talk a bit about your book?
Yeah, for sure. So I recently published A Guide to Sobriety, 10 Gentle Reminders. And the book is an unconventional approach to a self-help book. It is more about self-empowerment through action as opposed to sorry and as opposed to writing out how my tools that I outline may be used in the reader's life. I leave it open to interpretation for the reader to pick and choose what tools they might want to utilize in their own lives if they choose to pick any tools that I outline. That is, I start by sharing a brief outline of my overall recovery journey, early active use, early recovery, and just a glimpse beyond. And then I outline the tools that I discovered along the way.
I love this so much. I bought it the other day. I meant to buy a few others, so I did. And I was really grateful that I could add this one to the collection. So I was really happy to get it because I think it's really important. And I think about, the amount of people that would benefit from it. And I've seen right away on your TikTok you talking about some of the things that matter here and just acknowledging this book in general. And I just wanted to have you on because, as you know, Harm reduction really matters to me. Sobriety really matters to me. Recovery really matters to me. I'm a facilitator for Mending Broken Hearts through the White Bison Wellbriety group as well. And, for me, if we don't deal with what the root of the issue is, then, sobriety and recovery is a very difficult journey. And not everybody's ready to do that yet either, though, right? So we're all on different parts of this journey. And for someone like me, I'm 47, I'm uncovering still roots of trauma that I thought was just rooted in childhood trauma, but it's actually rooted in my ADHD and possible autism. So, it's been really interesting having you go through this journey with us.
Yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful to have had the time and the privilege to be able to share what an incredible journey it's been for me. And I'm just hopeful that, anyone who reads the book takes away at least one thing that might help them on their own healing journey or help give insight into friends and family who might be struggling with addictions themselves.
I wanted to ask you about the journey of deciding to write a book and then actually writing it. And what was that like for you?
Well, deciding to write a book was something that I thought I would always do when I was a kid. I always thought that I'd end up writing at least one book in my life, and I never knew what about. And I had this fantastic journey of sobriety. And when I came out of it, I started doing quite a bit of public speaking. And this is after I had already come up with the 10 gentle reminders that I had been utilizing myself. And I started sharing these reminders at different events, and they were really well received. And, their people were always asking for more and more. And I figured, why not just write it all down and put it into a book? It's uh, been, and it took over 2 years.
Oh, yeah, it's not a quick journey, is it?
And I had to take some time off school. And, I thought, what better time to write my book than right now when I'm not in school, I'm not working. Let's just dedicate all this energy that we have to writing this book out. And it took me a couple months to write everything, all my thoughts down, and kind of put everything out there that I thought was relevant. And, the first draft was just a mess. And uh, it wasn't until I started listening to my wife about what it should look like that it started to come together into a real book. And I was really fortunate because my dad is a teacher, and he was able to ask some of his fellow staff members and his principal if they could actually edit the book for me. And I'm impatient, so I took what was edited, instead of bringing it to a publishing house, I just decided to self-publish, and just I didn't want to wait the few years that you would have to wait, dealing with contracts and stuff. So I just published it right away.
I'm glad you did. And that legalese part is, I wish people understood how scary and intimidating that can be because even for myself, I worry a lot about, you know, all of that world of legalities. I see my auntie who is a lawyer. She's retired now and she's struggling with cancer. So I'm not too sure how much longer we have really with her, but um, that world of legality is just, it's so overwhelming. So I'm glad you just wrote it and you've self-published. And what was self-publishing like for you?
It was quite simple. There's quite a few great guides out there that really outline how to go about self-publishing, like um, step by step. And there was this great uh, software called Atticus that formats the book exactly to Amazon standards.
Mm.
And so you can write it. It formats your chapters right down to the paragraph formatting, page format, and that really took a lot of stress off. And then my wife made the cover for me, and it really just Amazon made it so simple. It's a it was pretty, yeah, it was really good. I had some troubles though. I accidentally published like I published a unfinished draft by accident, and
Oh, darn it.
so there was a few mishaps, so it wasn't super smooth, but it
Yeah.
worked out in the end.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I'm really happy for you. And just know that I actually am in awe of you. I'm inspired by you and many other folks that have written books and self-published because I just feel like it's really overwhelming to do, yet you did it, and as did many others. And I think it's wonderful. And I can't wait to read this book. I can't wait to have it on the book club itself. And hopefully, give me another excuse to talk about Narcan, talk about naloxone kids, talk about don't coke alone in the bathroom, and all the other harm reduction slogans that I just love and get a kick out of. But obviously, the bigger picture is that we're trying to save our people, and if one of the biggest traumas and roots of it is the lack of not just representation, but the lack of culture in general. To me, when I think of, I got two other self published books here, the power of our people being like, okay, we're not going through these mainstream publishing companies. We're just going to publish it so that, you know, little kids can have, um, sharing the land we call home, raised with books like this, where we talk about treaty from the time you're itty bitty and little. I think folks like yourself are really helping reclaim who we are, reclaiming the things that we need to do in order to move forward. And in your case, talking about sobriety, like this is really important that we are talking about our mental health and ways to navigate all of this. So I hope you know how incredibly proud I am to see, someone so young doing this great work and helping so many others while you do it. And your content creations that you do are just fantastic. And I've been really blessed to get to know your mom through TikTok as well as your extended family in general. And so I just think what you're doing is fantastic work.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I just try to, do everything that I do as authentically as I possibly can. And that's something I strive to do and, hope others are inspired to strive for when they interact with my content or, my book and whatever it is that I put out there.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, hats off to you. I'm think it's amazing. Do you want to talk anything else about your book or maybe about sobriety that you'd like to share on the podcast?
Yeah, well, the book is um, intended to be a gentle approach, or to come, sorry, the book is intended to come from a gentle approach. I try to, I write from a trauma-informed approach. So I know addiction is really a light topic, and it can be um, difficult to kind of dance that line between sharing too much and not being able to get your point across. And so I tried to walk that line as carefully as I could. Uh, I do warn anyone though before reading that it still can be triggering at times. There's difficult topics discussed. Like I said, I come from a trauma informed, or I write from a trauma informed approach. So I do my best to kind of avoid trigger words and sharing too many details when difficult topics are discussed. But uh, yeah, I'm really proud of it. I'm just blown away that it's out and that people are actually buying it. And I really do just hope that people can find their own gentle reminders from it and are able to walk with more confidence on their healing journey.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I hope I pray that so many folks will see this book, read this book, be inspired by your book, and just know that I'm like over the moon about your book. So really happy that it's out there, and I can't wait to read it and have it be a part of my book club. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you to you too.
Hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. And please know you're always welcome back with whatever new project you're working on. Because now that you've wrote one book, I hope that we'll get to see more and more books from you.
Yeah, I'm hoping to. I'm gonna let this one breathe for a few years, and then I think I'll come back with something new, and maybe hopefully I'll write a fantasy series. That's always been my dream since I was a kid.
Well, first of all, happy belated Inuk Day, like because they had an International Inuit Day, and I was just thinking like there's so many amazing stories that come from up north, specifically the Inuit. So I think there's lots of fun stuff you could write.
Yeah, I'm hoping to.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Brayden.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, so happy to.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to make it work again. Sorry I was late there.
Oh, you weren't late to me. In fact, again, I just really appreciate you taking your time and doing this twice with me because, yeah, I think that your voice matters. And I think, male representation, but how, being a Nook, we have representation matters. Somebody asked me the other day, and I can't think of another single Satu Dene woman that I can look up to and aspire to be because like my mom, my granny, nobody gave them the mic, right? So that representation matters, I think. And I see in the 12-step program, we talk a lot about a 13 stepper. And a 13 stepper is somebody who's kind of preys on the brand new folks in their sobriety journey. And one of the things I love about your book is like you are not that person. You are not. I've read some other folks' sobriety journeys, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a person that I would want to have my newly recovered friend being in the same room with, actually. So, from my point of view, like the colonized way of sobriety is really can be damaging, and especially to vulnerable women. So I appreciate this book for that reason, as well as that you can see it's somebody who is coming from a good place and trying to, put good in the world. So I'm so happy you came back to talk about it. Thank you, Brayden.
Of course, no, I'm just happy you gave me another chance to talk about it.
Oh, geez, I'm lucky here, not you. Oh, just such a breath of fresh air. So grateful he came back and forgave me for erasing our last podcast, which was absolutely fabulous. Um, you guys, so tomorrow is my book club, and Code Talker is the book, and oh my God, I am in love with this book so much. I'm just going to read this little piece to you to tease you all, because if you haven't read this book, I'm hoping that this little teaser will be the reason why you pick it up, because I promise you it is worth your time. So, for folks who don't know, so tomorrow's Remembrance Day, and we just had Indigenous Veterans Day. And for folks who are like, why do you have Indigenous Veterans Day? Isn't one day good enough? The reason is because when the white veterans came back, they were given things that the Indigenous were not. And Indigenous continued to be treated as second class citizens. So, uh, and worse, actually, and worse. So, really and truly, if you don't know about it, please look into it rather than asking that question, because this information is available. But I wanted to read this one part from the code. So, for folks who don't know, um, when World War II was happening, and this was both in Canada and the US, but I just happened to have this American book. So this is an American point of view of World War II in the Pacific during Japan. And they had a special top secret a group of people, and they decided that because Japan keeps breaking all of our codes, we have to figure out a new one. So it was suggested that they consider, doing this language, this Navajo language. Navajo was never written down. So for them, they thought this might work. So they took 32, technically in the end, 32 Navajo speaking folks and put them in a room. Well, first they made them all go through Marine training so that they were Marines. And then instead of being allowed to go home, they were actually like doing this top secret work that they weren't allowed to tell absolutely anyone. And then when they could tell people, it was actually because, I don't know, 30 years or something, when top secret information gets declassified, this is when people found out. So, way after World War II was done. Um, so, the original Navajo code talkers created a code so that they could try to talk without Japan knowing what they were saying. So I just want to read this little excerpt from page 109, the Unbreakable Code. Even after we compiled a comprehensive list of military terms, there was still a problem. In Navajo, no equivalents for words like fighter plane existed. We chose animals and other items from our everyday world that resembled the military equipment. So, fighter plane was represented by the quick and maneuverable hummingbird. The huge transport planes were represented by an eagle who could carry prey. Sorry, um, a battleship was a whale. A destroyer was called a shark. A cruiser was like a small whale, so it had different code. And choosing each code, we talked about how the animal chosen lived and hunted, and we did our best to link up logically with a piece of military equipment. Sometimes we used non-animal items to represent certain things. A hand grenade was a potato, bombs were eggs, and Japan was slant eye. There is no Navajo equivalent for months of the year since we did not divide our calendar into 12 chunks. Instead, we used concepts to describe each month. January, a cold month, was crusted snow, or the month of April is when spring sprouts begin to grow, so small plant. June was when planting was done and became big planting. In addition to the alphabet, we devised nearly 220 terms for various concepts and diverse military equipment. A code name was chosen to represent the United States of America, and that translated to our mother. And so I wanted to read that to you because I just loved, the Indigenous lens of looking at that. And I have, my husband said, isn't that what that Wind Talker movie was about? And so I looked it up and it was, but the movie itself is all about Nicolas Cage being a white savior and saving Adam Beach. And that's not at all what was going on in this war. Like he has excerpts of moments of what it was like to actually be in war. And there certainly was no white bodyguard. So I don't appreciate the movie, depicting the code talkers as being babysat by white people, because that's actually not what happened at all. And so here in Canada, we've had Cree talkers, etc. So these are things that I think are really important because, as was said in this book, Code Talker, he came straight from residential school. In the States, they call it boarding school. And he was, you know, basically screamed at, yelled at. He didn't really get much into his experience other than he just knew it was bad for him to be speaking his language. Then when he got home, he was really grateful that he could speak his language and that, it was an easy transition for him to go back to talking Navajo and how proud he was in the end because him and his friends could do this. And of course, they all became friends as a result of doing this. And they were told, it's top secret, don't tell anybody ever. And so carrying that with them that entire time, it's one thing that they kept the secret. I just can't even believe it, let alone the fact that they weren't treated the same when they got home. So I'm so excited for this book club. I hope you consider listening to the full one when we unpack it tomorrow. Anyway, proud that this podcast gives solutions, cultural safety training to make a safer space for Indigenous people of color, those with disabilities, and to us LGBTQ to speak. Quick story for you. I recently was volunteering with my community association at a casino, and I was talking with a fellow, and I'll tell you, this is the difference between what I consider a safe space and what they consider a safe space. Because, I was talking about the fact that my daughter has come out, is a lesbian, and just the way he looked at me, like, oh, well, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, I don't care. And he was like, really? And it dawned on me, I'm like, yeah, like I surround myself with people who are queer. And you could see that was such a new and shocking revelation for this fellow. And, I said, I ran with David Kahn, who's openly gay and person of color. And, I just don't think about the amount of guests that I have on the show that identify as queer in some capacity. I forget that when you live that heterosexual life, that you don't have people in your life that are queer. And so it is a big deal and shocking and, all of these things when people come out. So, like, this is what I'm talking about creating that safer space. Like, that wasn't an issue for my daughter at all to be considering when, a lot of her uncles that come here are literally married. So anyway, just wanted to point that out to you because, again, if you don't have, Black friends or Indigenous friends or folks with disabilities, like I get a kick out of my friend Dan. He's in a wheelchair and he makes fun of people all the time, and he's a disability advocate, and he makes really funny jokes, as do many folks. I don't know, talking about the things that they talk about. So same with my content on my Insta, my socials. You'll see, a very diverse amount of inclusion and jokes about it, and it's always funny how people will um, gravitate to that quick joke serotonin laugh on a social, right? Even though there usually is quite a deeper meaning to all of it. Anyway, according to the 2024 Quality of Life report from the Calgary Foundation, 87% of members of a racialized group have experienced discrimination based on religion, ethnicity, skin color, culture, language, accent, gender, sexual orientation, at least some of the time. 50% of Calgarians claim that they are committed to anti-racism, gender, or sorry, diversity, equity, and inclusion, according to the Quality of Life report. But I don't believe that at all, not even a little, that 50% of Canadians are Calgarians are committed to it because I don't see that in my life. I don't see it on the C train. I don't see it in people, sharing. The fact that people felt comfortable saying to me, "Oh, I don't know who Mary Sinclair is," like that's really impacted me. I'm really disappointed with folks. I was also disappointed with how many people were asking where you get a poppy online. And this was by people who would identify as a native Calgarian. Not that you should unless you're native, but people who, you know, are white, are Canadian, they don't know where to get a poppy. And then, I feel bad because like no question is stupid. No question. But when people don't know, about Murray Sinclair, then obviously they don't know about the reconciliation calls to action. They don't know about his importance as a senator. They don't know. They don't know. And when I think about you not knowing how to get a poppy, even beaded poppies, like I don't understand. So yeah, I know there are certain things that always shock me and surprise me. And creating a safer space for folks that are queer is not really what everybody's doing. That's 100% true. So I encourage people to go to heretohelp.bc.ca. Google in general, what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. Because if you don't know how to create a safer space for Indigenous people, you ask them, how do you like the benefits, like free gas? That is a horribly racist thing to say in 2024. And it was said to my face with a full chest. So, internalized racism, lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks experienced by the structure of racism imposed on these lands. I think Donna Bevins at racialequitytools.org is fantastic with all of the resource files she has. Don't hesitate to give her some monies, please. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention. I mean, there's so much of that going on right now. The fact that, on Twitter was trending her body, my choice, and this guy got doxxed for it. But it's the point that somebody felt comfortable not just saying it, but many people resharing it and talking about it. So yeah, just a reminder, your house is flammable, folks, if you think you can just go around saying that kind of stuff. Um, do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee. So that's afsc.org. Also, if you experience racism here locally, you can report it at acttoendracism.ca or text at 587-507-3838. I've shared this YouTube channel regularly from the city of Calgary. There's a presentation on the journey of becoming an anti-racism leader. I encourage people to follow it, to watch it, to give feedback, maybe post something that you learned about it and share it. Um, Stop the Stack, YYC. Highly recommend that you follow what they're doing. And if you have some donations that you can give, please give it there. We have two Black Lives Matter activists, mothers, who are being legally targeted and could use your support. Indigenous have been talking about these issues, sharing their traumas and reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians in their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they are cutting violence prevention programs, Indigenous education. So, fun fact about Indigenous education in Alberta, I called out Jason Kenney a long time ago about the fact that he kept using this ethical oil conversation about why people should buy our oil. And I regularly point out like the amount of Indigenous people that were dispossessed in order for them to drill baby drill. And and talked about the calls to justice, very specific for industry when talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls just to get blocked. And they're putting in the Alberta government is putting into our education system that they want to teach these kids this talking point of ethical oil. So I encourage all the natives listening to teach your kids that there's nothing ethical about stealing someone's land, moving the people, killing the people, force assimilation into English, and continued killing of the Indigenous women and sterilizing them. So, and if settlers did that, that would be great. But I just hear much from y'all, so I don't know what you're teaching your kids. Uterus health choices being cut. Well, we're having that conversation right now because of the anti-trans legislation that has happened here in Alberta. I've been sharing a lot of information from Momentum, encouraging people to donate to Skipping Stone because of the legal fees that they'll have with EGAL Canada in order to fight the Alberta government on uterus health choices, gay, straight alliances, and just a lack of human rights in general, as well as for the migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities. Know that your vote to that party directly negatively impacts marginalized people. Not that they implement the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform and violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice, national inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. Again, provincially here, we have the 113 pathways to justice, which clearly Danielle Smith is ignoring that and her Council on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls work because of the anti-trans legislation. And for folks who are, queer and advocating against all of this anti-trans rhetoric, I'm seeing you not include your Two-Spirit, and I'm seeing you not base all of your solutions in the 231 calls to justice. So that's again that example of racism in the queer community. And like my daughter's just outright said, she's very much struggling with white queers because of their racism, and I'm worried for her for that as well. I wish I could, just let her be. Anyway, municipally, we have the White Goose Flying Report denying all of these reports as abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the educational and health institutions, with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from the election platforms of politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running. Should be understood by everyone, all the parties, all of the politicians, community organizations, so that, a native could volunteer for your community association without having horrid, racist, and gendered violent things being said to them. Google articles on how non-Indigenous Canadians can become allies to Indigenous people. There's tons of them. The Calgary Foundation also has a great ally toolkit I've been sharing that from the CalgaryFoundation.org. I really encourage folks to follow aboriginalalert.ca so that you know who is missing in your area. The Missing Children Society of Canada has included like elders as well. So strongly recommend following these two organizations. I really supported women's homelessness.ca because they were really advocating for a lot of things that I feel we should be advocating for. Unfortunately, we have so many drug poisoning deaths happening in Alberta. We've exceeded the over 10,000 deaths since 2016. So that's why I'm such an advocate for the Narcan and the naloxone and pray that everybody has it on them and give it away freely. If you are using any substance, please don't use alone. If you are using alone, there's the National Overdose Response Service at 888-688-NORS for support. There's also a NORS app, a Brave app, and a Lifeguard app. DOORS has one, but it's through Alberta, and we have no transparency on that. So we think it's just propaganda for them. I also strongly advocate for Freedom's Path Recovery Society.ca, where you can donate. They provide free one-on-one addictions counseling services, group treatment for recovery, queer-friendly, anti-racist. As many of you know, I also support Canada's first 2S LGBTQ addiction recovery center, stonewallrecovery.ca. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything I talked about today, please don't hesitate to contact the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 855-242-3310. You can also go to hopeforwellness.ca. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can go to 844-413-6649. We also have the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta at ssisa.ca. The Indian Residential School Survivor and Family Hotline is 866-925-4419. The Kids Help Phone is 1-800-668-6868. You can text at 686868. And the Native Youth Crisis Hotline is 877-209-1266. You can also go to the LGBTQ or LGBT, sorry, no two, no Q, line. And that you can text at 647-694-4275, or you can go to youthline.ca. For non-Indigenous, you can go to any distress center in your area. There's usually a functioning 211, or you can go to the new national 988, text 988, or go to 988.ca. I also want to give a shout out to my American friends. Yeah, congratulations on that new election, hey? Uh, for those with two-spirit identity in the States, you can go to strongheartshelpline.org. You can call 844-7-NATIVE or 844-762-8433. itgetsbettercanada.org has lots of resources for the LGBTQ community. A warning for BIPOC. I've seen some of the orgs listed in Alberta, and they do not have anti-racism practices or Indigenous education. So I worry for those, and you may want to try the MMIWG2 line as a result, or find BIPOC or QT BIPOC organization close by because, yeah, I just don't trust them. It's like women's shelters. They were excluding Awaton for so long, and now that Awaton's run by white women, I'm pretty sure white people actually. There's a man there straight from the UCP to take care of that place for them all. So, yeah, I just find that they don't have culturally appropriate language or understandings or fundamental understanding of racism as well. And if you don't understand racism, pretty hard to support somebody, isn't it? Anyway, violence is my everyday reality. Every generation faces it. This is self-care, how I take my power back, representation, so that I can speak freely without interruption, tone policing, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions. Many people do not share Indigenous opinions. They sure like to tell us their ignorance, that's for sure, even if they don't know anything about us. know anything about colonialism, know anything about the constant surveillance of Indigenous people, our protests, our vigils, and our rights. I share racism tips every single day. It's just unacceptable anymore. Also, learn about being trauma informed, and we heard Braden talk about that for him as well, and you can see it in his writings. Anyway, folks like me are dealing with internalized racism, gatekeeping, and surviving off the status quo. People who are in their trauma that they deplete personal resources and it hurts. And for folks who listen to my Pretend Indians one, you would see that as I was going through different drugs of ADHD as well, how it can really affect a person if you're not trauma informed. Anyway, internal, external racism is an everyday reality for me, Indigenous peoples, folks with disabilities, QP, BIPOC, and others. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, to my granny, to my mom of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family. I want to say thank you to my husband. On top of producing and editing the show, he's my husband, he's my childhood friend, father of our child. He has witnessed the decades of racism and sexism. And now we're going through this typical, neurodivergent, spicy conversations together as we try to learn more about, all of these things that we just were absolutely never taught, unfortunately. So I'm just grateful for him, grateful for all he does. And to our child, we are so blessed to have you in our life. We are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. I just hope one day my family will be proud in the way we're talking about these issues today. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been kind to me on my Red Road journey, not to mention I'm a treaty partner to them. Uh, Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Um, My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, we'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps. You can, do all those things. The second last thing I'd like to focus on is something that I just thought was so magical and vivid when talking about the late Murray Sinclair, whom I cried for. I put up a ribbon skirt in my door to honor him and acknowledge him, and he's being buried today. And there was a reporter that was lucky enough to be in the family circle for when he was being transported. She tweeted this out: "A casket carrying the late Murray Sinclair left for a cemetery today in a hearse pulled by a Harley Davidson. The hearse had flashing purple lights and a Harley skull emblem inside. Another brick in the wall by Pink Floyd played. Hey, teachers, leave them kids alone." And everyone I shared that with, we all got goosebumps. I got goosebumps. I'm getting them right now. And I just think, and so many people commented, what a way to go. We are so sad, but honored that we got to be here while he did his work. And honestly, the reconciliation calls to action are my life's work. Until 94 are implemented, I won't quit talking. Same with the 231 calls to justice. So if you're a politician tired of me, start doing that work and then you can shut me up. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone who listens, and I always want to end with side eye to those Calgary rabbits. Lucky we're not Trish. And my beautiful cousin once responded, "Are you be in my dish?" Thanks again, folks, for listening.